Today on Better in Our Backyard, we'll be featuring Al Christianson Sr. from Ladysmith, Wisconsin. Al served as a city administrator for the City of Ladysmith for over 30 years, and he was pretty new to the role when the Flambeau Mine began its permitting process in the late 80s. Al just didn't play a role in the permitting process, but he was also a part of the construction, the actual mining, and reclamation phases of the Flambeau Mine. For those of you who don't know, the Flambeau Mine was owned and operated by Rio Tinto. The life of the mine spanned from 1993 to 1997 and was mainly a copper mine. And Al was kind enough to donate and dedicate some time to share his experience, his knowledge, and his perspective on the positive impact that the Flambeau Mine had on the city of Ladysmith. So thank you to Al for doing this. I enjoyed the discussion, and I hope everyone enjoys it. While the Flambeau Mine was up and running, would you say from a community perspective, the majority of people were supported the mine as it was running?
There was a small group of people that were very pro-mining, a small group of people very anti-mining, but because it was a relatively small operation, I don't think the majority of people, I think they were the so-called silent majority. They didn't have a lot to say one way or the other. They took it in stride. They left it to the Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources to make sure that it was run well environmentally, which it was, and to the local officials to see that the mine created some economic benefit in the community, which it did. And only remember a small group of fairly dedicated local people who opposed. I'm going to say, I could probably, I'd have to think about it for a while, but come up with the names of a dozen people that, they frankly put their heart and soul into opposing it, but it wasn't a very big group.
Okay, for the folks that were employed on the mine, were many of them local residents?
I think it was over 50%. I want to say that I believe the mine's workforce at peak was probably about 75 people. 45 of those were probably locals and 30 were probably people from the mining industry who came in, did what they do, and then left after it closed. But the 45 local people, I think we all have these images of miners. It might be a guy with a carbide lamp on the front of a helmet or something that's way out of date. But when you really look at people that work in the mining industry, or at least here, it was truck drivers, office secretaries, personnel managers, surveyors, engineers, heavy equipment operators, electricians, plumbers, carpenters. Those people already existed in the local community and took jobs with the mine and were absorbed back into the community for the most part after mining was concluded. Although I believe that a couple people here did go on to stay with the mining industry and move to other locations to do that.
Okay. Well, interesting. And one other thing too, I wanted to ask Al was, so like up on the range, there's a lot of people, for those who oppose polymet, they often refer to the Flambeau Mine as an example of a mining company that didn't adhere to environmental standards. They point to some minor lawsuits that happened over the past couple decades. Is there any truth to that the Flambeau Mine / Rio Tinto didn't have respect for the environment while they were up and running?
I don't buy that kind of argument at all. And I would remind those people that every time they drive to work, their exhaust from their vehicle is polluting the air, just like mine is. Our society accepts a certain amount of that because we can't function in our culture without that happening. It's whether it's within reasonable limits. I think there was one case of a minor issue with a intermittent stream, a stream that didn't even flow all year round, picked up a little bit of copper that essentially was not removed from the rail loading area. It was just little pieces of copper that were laying on the ground. Subsequently, those were removed and the problem abated, but that's minor, very minor. So you throw a copper penny in a mud puddle and you're going to get a little bit of copper pickup there. But I think they made a mountain out of a molehill in the way they define that. You know, having served as the city administrator here for 33 years, if there was a major environmental issue here, I think I'd be aware of it, but I'm not. I'd encourage anyone who has issues like that or concerns to maybe contact the Rusk County zoning office and ask them if they're aware of anything, and I'm sure they're not. So if we don't know it here, why would they know it wherever they're from?
And so now, fast forward to present day, what is the like right now? It's a reclamation site, former mine site, obviously, and do people still use it today and enjoy it?
They do, you know, for the most part, it looks like it did prior to mining, but there are a number of recreational facilities on the site at the present time. Uh, Generally, low impact types of uses: hiking, biking, ski trails, equestrian trails, shore fishing, bird watching. There's been 190 species of birds documented to use seasonally or year round the Flambeau mine site. But what I think is the most interesting thing that a lot of people aren't aware of is that the Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources located its Ladysmith Service Center in the former mine buildings. We were able to keep those buildings, which would have had to have been removed otherwise. And right about that same point in time, the DNR was looking to have a newer facility in the community. We took some mining dollars and kind of reworked the structures that the mining company had on that site, its offices, its lab facilities and garages, to make them a DNR service center to serve Ladysmith and the surrounding area. So what better place to have the DNR than right on top of the mine site to monitor it going forward?
Mark Gross told me that the Flambeau Mine really helped out with rebuilding a library, and is there any truth to that?
Yeah, the community had actually approached Flambeau Mining, and this was after it was up and operating, about the possibility of them making a key contribution to creation of a community center, a recreational type center. And they thanked us for making that request and asked to give them some time to ponder it. Well, they came back, it was actually relatively quickly, and said they'd be willing to do a key donation, but preferred that it be more educationally aligned. They were aware that the library that existed here at the time was small, undersized, not expandable, and that it wasn't handicap accessible. In fact, it was located right up to the bank of the Flambeau River and only about 20 feet off US Highway 8. So there was simply no place to go with expansion. So they offered up a $500,000 gift to build a new facility. One contingency being that we raise $500,000 from another source to give us at least $1 million to work with, or that if we came short of that and say raised $250,000, they would match that $250,000. But again, their cap would be $500,000. Well, it quickly occurred to us that we were getting mining taxes that ordinarily we wouldn't have, which gave us a source of matching funds. So that's what we came back with and said, absolutely, we'll match your $500,000 gift with $500,000 of your taxes. And as it turned out, we had also sought to generate other contributions and were fairly successful with that. We were able to raise an additional $350,000, which ranged from kids throwing coins into jars all the way to a gift valued at $55,000 from a local window and door company, which essentially donated all the windows and doors to the new library. So ended up having a resultant facility valued at $1,350,000, not including the site in a city park, which we already owned. And it's an absolutely gorgeous facility, been in service for over 20 years now.
Overall, do you consider the Flambeau Mine a success?
I certainly do, and I know that I've talked to DNR officials since mine closure, people that I run into here and there at different gatherings who were involved from that perspective, and I know that they also feel it was successful. We believe that we can trace back probably 600 jobs that were created indirectly as a result of investing mining grants and taxes. And so that helped grow the local industrial base, and you have to think that that was an economic success.
So with your experience as a city administrator, if there was ever, for some odd reason, in a perfect world, an opportunity that the Flambeau Mine could continue operations, they found a deposit for 20 more years of copper, would you welcome them with open arms?
I would certainly, as I said earlier, every mine situation is different, and they all have to be reviewed on their merits and site-specific considerations. But I would absolutely love to have the opportunity to consider that and to look at what might happen, and it's a possibility here, a real possibility, because another thing that not a lot of people know or paid attention to was, even though the Flambeau mine is closed, we know for a fact from exploratory drilling done before permitting that there's a zinc deposit that goes down to at least 1,000 feet. The Flambeau mine was only about 225 feet deep as an open pit. With open pit mining, it gets more and more costly the bigger the pit gets. So it was no longer economically viable to do open pit mining any deeper than that. Would have had to gone to underground mining, but there is still some copper, not as high a quality as was in the upper 225 feet, but some copper along with zinc down to at least 1,000 feet. So, there's a possibility that sometime in the future somebody would make an attempt to remove that.
If there was anything else that you'd want to touch on with your experience in the Flambeau Mine, is there anything that really stands out to you when someone brings that, when somebody talks about it or brings up the topic?
I think we did. I think we did a really good job, working with investing those mining dollars that we had, considering we had a very short period of time, a short window of opportunity. Did a great job in investing those dollars in ways that, as I said, would return the economic benefit on into the future. I mentioned in earlier comments that we have dollars coming back yet to this day from sale and lease of industrial facilities that not only created replacement jobs and tax base in many cases, additional tax base, but brought back raw dollars to be reused again. I believe that we have a balance of about $400,000 in that fund to this day. It is restricted to reuse for manufacturing, industry base types of projects, but it's really nice to have that there.